So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted that we have with us Howard Mould, who's a director at BGM Logistics Consultants. So firstly, Howard, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and BGM, what you do and how you help people to the audience, that would be wonderful.
Hi, Chris. Oh, thanks very much for the invite onto the podcast.
Welcome.
Yeah, BGM Logistics Consultants. We are primarily a logistics consultancy advising companies on how to improve their logistics operations and understanding what they do and how they do that. That's the core of what we are and where we come from. But having said that, actually, the last 2 or 3 years, most of what our work has been involved with has been customs declarations, improving customs operations for businesses in the area. We recognised, with the advent of Brexit, that a lot of companies were going to struggle, that they would have difficulties in that area, and our whole ethos really is about helping companies to improve and to get out of tricky situations. And a lot of companies found themselves in tricky situations at the beginning of Brexit, and we did our best effectively to help them out of those and get them through that. So most of what we do now is actually customs clearances and advising companies on what customs processes to use and how to set up their systems to get their customs operations right. A lot of it is about understanding what you want out of your customs operations and putting everything in place to begin with. So that you start off on the right foot. The worst thing that can happen is that it does happen. We get a phone call and say, my vehicle is now at the border. What do I need to do? And the answer is usually, well, you should have started a week ago. So get something moving. So yeah, so it's trying to get the basics right and understand what the clients need.
Wonderful. I mean, it's a great example of finding a problem that exists or newly exists and helping people solve it, which is a great way to develop a business and a niche. That's wonderful. So how would it be okay to start with talking a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one?
Well, it's I mean, my background was not originally in logistics.
Right.
There's not that many people in logistics who originally planned to be in logistics.
Right.
We sort of got into it by accident in a lot of cases. In my case, BGM is a family company. So it was originally started by my father in 1979, and I joined him, having sort of understood what he did in terms of then sort of getting a sort of feel for it, and joined him, and that was 79. So I joined nearly 40 years ago.
Amazing.
And I've been sort of doing this business for 40 years now, and now my son's joined us in the business as well. So we're continuing a family trend and continue going forward. And he's very keen to sort of take it forward and take it into the new era, so to speak.
Brilliant. I've interviewed and I've obviously met quite a few logistics companies, haulage companies, and they often are family businesses, aren't they? I've noticed.
They are, yes. There's a lot of businesses grown up sort of, and it's one of those businesses or industries that can start fairly small.
Yes.
With just a man in a van in a sense, and then grow to a multi-billion pound company if you've got it right. So the logistics industry is very much appropriate to that. Yeah.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So obviously you joined your father's business, but when you were growing up before that, is there anything else you had planned out for you? Anything else you thought you might?
My background was probably more originally sort of electronics and physics, so it was that sort of background. So I'm sort of analytical, and which helps very much.
Yes.
In doing what we're doing, but yeah, that sort of analytical sort of science background is where I come from. So that's what I preferred. I could see though that electronics was going to become more and more sophisticated, and I didn't have the kind of standing within the industry to basically do what I wanted to do, so I switched completely.
Brilliant.
So yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. And sort of looking at as you've developed the company and you've been in charge, what are some of the biggest issues you've had to overcome?
There's been the biggest issue has been Brexit recently.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can
that's
imagine.
massive in terms of the whole history in the sense of the industry. I mean, there's been enormous changes throughout the times I've been basically working in the industry. From I remember when the sort of the original sort of next day services came in, and which overturned the whole industry sort of from what was quite a sleepy operation where hauliers did a few parcels here and there, but everything was planned over sort of like 3 to 5 days delivery time, and you had to have lots of storage in house to cover your stock, and that sort of just changed with TNT coming into the market and way back in sort of probably in the late 70s, and so that made the biggest change. Going into the single market was the next biggest change in terms of removing the need for customs across Europe, and turning that effectively into a domestic market. And that changed again the whole structure of the logistics systems that were in place.
Yeah.
And you got more and more sophisticated systems that sort of came along, and we benefit. I think the UK benefited from sort of doing quite a lot of storage and delivery operations into Europe through that, and we became quite good at that and slick at that process. And then I have to say, in recent times, before Brexit, I think Amazon has been one of the biggest drivers in the logistics industry, changing again our expectations from kind of, it's not same day now, it's kind of I want it 10 minutes.
Yes.
That's how far we've sort of come now.
Yes.
It's so that we don't store anything now. We just sort of get it as we want it, literally just in time. So it's been a remarkable movement in that sense. Whether it will sustain that in the domestic market, whether that's sustainable on the international sort of level. Now I see people moving back to kind of, we can't do everything in 24 hours anymore. We've got to sort of plan ahead. We've got to moving more towards 3 to 5 day transit times across Europe again, rather than being able to sort of say, yes, we'll do it next day. You've got to get the customs planned and in place before you move, and that now takes a day or so.
And it can't be very efficient to do everything like that, just in time, really.
It's not. It's about, in my opinion, a lot of what we do and what I've learned over the years is that basically it's about understanding the needs of the individual operation. So many people sort of say, so what's the best way to do logistics and things like that? And this is, however you want to, there's so many different ways you can do logistics, but it's about your business. It's about, what's your customer demand like? What's your product size like? What's your customers' buying patterns like? That will determine what kind of logistics operation you want to put in place. So that's where you start. What do you need? What do you want out of the process? What's your targets? Right, then you move to this, and so that's how you have to phrase it, and sort of build it. And again, a lot of companies sort of say or people sort of say, what's the best carrier? Who's the best carrier in the UK and things like that. And it's kind of, there isn't a best carrier. There's one that's right for you. And picking the one that's right for you is critical. And that is about understanding who you are and what you are. So we've had situations where you get put in a particular carrier into two companies who are virtually next door to each other. And almost the same driver will pick up from both locations. And one of them thinks they're the best thing in the sliced bread. And the other one thinks they're the worst company ever that's in the world. And you sort of have to say, well, why is it? Because they're both doing the same thing, or the carrier's doing the same thing in both cases. And often, I think it comes down to the cultural mix. If you've got if the cultural mix of one company is different to the other, then you struggle to work well together. And that's particularly true, I think, in logistics. If you're expecting lots of information back from the carrier, in terms of feedback and things like that, but you're not, and they can't give it to you, you're going to think they're bad. But equally, if they are giving you lots of information and you can't cope with that, you think they're the worst thing in the world. So it's about sort of making sure that the system and the carrier match the requirements that you've got. Then you get a good solution. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And it's, I think you talk about culture mix is something that we do a lot of work with businesses on is being clear on our, you know, our culture, our values. And the thing I believe is that good, you know, good relationships come with a match of goals. We both want to achieve the same thing, but great relationships come with a match of values. We both believe the same things are important.
Yes.
And so marketing and attracting clients and employees that share our values is the most effective way for long-term and therefore profitable relationships, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's very much true. I think that's, as you say, there is again employees as well. If the employees are out of step or the managers are out of step with their employees in terms of what they want, what they expect, and what they're prepared to offer, then that's just a recipe for disaster. And you're going to have conflict. Everybody's going to be unhappy, and that will lead to a poor performance across the whole company. I think again, going back to challenges again, we tend to work from home. All our team work from home, which is a change since COVID. And when we moved to work from home because of COVID, everybody sort of working in the business said, actually, this is fine. You know, this works quite well, and we quite like it. So, well, why don't we just carry on that way? And which is what we did. But it does create challenges. You don't communicate as much as you used to do. You have to go out of your way to make sure you make contact with people more than you used to do. Make sure everybody's okay, that they're not struggling because they're worried about asking about stuff which they would have before just put their head around the door and said, "What's this about?" You know, so there are challenges in those areas, and you've got to look after those and look after the people. You know, that takes a little bit more, but the benefits are great for individuals, you know, and the business. To be perfectly honest, saves us the price of an office, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my clients is literally doesn't have an office at all, which sounds like you're the same, and that they're and it feels a little bit for me uncomfortable not having some location, but they're making it work really, really well, very effectively. They hire rooms when they need it, and it's a big cost to have if you don't need it.
It is. There are times, I must be honest, where I'm thinking it'd be good to actually have everybody learning off each other all the time. And sort of, you know, sharing that information and sharing that experience all the time. And there is, it is not quite as good in that sense. And you have to be, as I say, you have to basically go the extra mile to make sure you do share that experience and that knowledge. We've sort of got to compensate, haven't we, in different ways for that. Just almost by osmosis, isn't it? It's just by sitting next to you, I learn from you, even if I'm not directly. It makes. That's right. You overhear conversations and you know, learn stuff from just all sorts of different things that you just pick up as you in an office that you don't do when you're at home.
Absolutely. No, I can think about when I've done that. I just listened to something. Oh, that was brilliant. You know, a conversation between a colleague and a client, and you think, oh, that was genius. And talk about learning. What would you say are the biggest learnings you've got about business and business growth in general?
Well, one of the things about the way we work, I mean, over the years, working as a consultant, getting to see a lot of companies. Lots of different sizes. You know, big companies, small companies, etc. Well-run companies, badly run companies. You know, everything. And you learn an awful lot from just sort of going in and sort of seeing how companies work, and what the individuals in those companies, those managers, what their ethoses are, how they work, and you gain a lot of information sort of and history just from that, just sort of listening to what they're saying, because everybody's more than happy usually to give you advice on what they do and how they do stuff, and so you get lots of information that way. And I think that the thing I take away from it more than anything is which has now become the buzzword, which is probably always the case, but the buzzword now for me is lean design, lean engineering. that lean process and seeing how that lean process is implemented in certain circumstances and what a difference that can make to the operation of a business, the way it can work, not just more cost effectively in terms of cheaper, but faster and better performance, fewer mistakes, just from that whole lean thing. And it goes through everything. It goes not just manufacturing. It should go through the whole process in terms of invoicing, purchase, all of it. Really should be down to lean processing. And it's that to me is the key thing, to take that lean approach to the processes that you put in place.
Brilliant.
Which is, it's a bit ironic because when working in customs, the last thing it is lean. It's the most sort of frustrating processes that you can come across, to be perfectly honest. It is very frustrating. I do describe the logistics is all about making things run smoothly, making smooth flow of goods, keeping things going. So a well-oiled machine, really. And customs is the grit that basically gets thrown in to make it stop working. That's what it feels like that a lot of the time, unfortunately. So, yeah.
I can totally, understand that, but I guess we, as travellers, can see that with things like travelling in and out of countries now. It's that the bureaucracy that comes now with, and understandable, because we're now no longer part of Europe, that we have to use our passport process to go into Europe. And I know customs is way more complex than that, so I don't envy you what you do. I have to be honest.
Well, it is complicated, and I think it's overcomplicated as well. I think there's anyway. I won't go too far down that road because I will go on and on about it. But it is a complex process, but it needs a lot of simplification in it, and there is lots of opportunities for simplification. Sort of, as I say, applying those lean processes to getting that working. But there's a long way to go yet.
Yes, I can honestly imagine.
I think a lot of the time in lean design, the biggest obstacle to overcome is people's apprehension about giving up processes that they've been comfortable with for a long time. And to actually challenge their view of life in terms of what actually is needed within the operation and what the core fundamentals of the operation are.
Changes. Most people have a certain level of fear or concern about change in general, don't they? And the more complex it's said. But there's a great book from a guy I worked with a long time ago called his name is Marshall Goldsmith, but he wrote a book called "What Got Us Here Won't Get Us There," and it sort of says, it does what he says. And if you know what I mean, it may have been fit for purpose, but that doesn't mean it continues to be fit for purpose. And I think it's that constant review. Process is so key.
Absolutely. And the world is changing so fast that what was right 5 years ago will not be right in 6 months. Almost completely. And even in another 2 years we're gonna have to look at it again, and sort of because things will have changed completely again. When you look forward in terms of there's a lot of talk and nervousness about AI and robots and everything like that. I sort of tend to stand on the side of opportunity, rather than sort of doom and threat. There is an opportunity to advance certain processes and things greatly. Yes, there are pitfalls that we've got to avoid, but the opportunity there to improve the procedures and facilities and activities of everybody is enormous. And it's an exciting time. If I think everybody's rightly nervous about how to do it and what to do, but it's there now. It's not going to go away.
Absolutely. And Howard, you probably were a business coaching organisation. I'm just keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with in general and influencers, whether that's business, sport, life in general.
I'm not I haven't had a lot of coaching in my time in terms of business coaching and so on.
No, no,
But as I say, I have actually worked alongside a lot of people within industry at all levels, and in a sense, you do get inadvertently coached
yes,
um, by those people. I mean, I worked closely with Alan Martin from Communities PLC for a good number of years. He's not a business coach, but he now runs or last time I spoke to him, he's very much involved in the purchasing organisations. But
brilliant.
and um, people learning off people like that was important. So yeah, those are the sort of people sort of I've sort of
Brilliant.
worked with and learned from. Really.
That's fantastic.
My father as well, of course. I mean, I worked with him, and he basically told me everything that I
I'm,
sort of to do with logistics and
I'm
everything
sure
like
he
that.
must have
So,
had a big impact. So, yeah, obviously.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. And do you have or have you developed or use any favourite quotes or sayings on a regular basis? Anything that typically comes to mind?
Repeatable ones. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Um, yeah. Nothing comes to mind at the minute, I'm afraid. So,
All
yeah,
good.
but I do. There are certain ones that I fundamental ones in terms of making sure things sort of are working properly. But I haven't got anything that sort of comes to mind at the minute, I'm
All
afraid.
good. All good. I like to collect them. They're I've had some amazing ones. In fact, I spoke to someone earlier and it was a quote from I think it's President Truman, which is very much about, being understanding that we've got to focus on ourselves and our beliefs and don't worry about what the people are saying. And it's just cool. And
Yeah.
and what would you say, Howard, you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Oh, crikey. Um, I've learned that I'm not as good as a lot of things as I think I am. Um, and therefore the importance of delegation is critical.
Great,
You
great.
know, do what there's communication is one of my best skills,
Yep,
and so I have to make an effort to sort of go along and do that.
yep,
Um, uh, Things like that are sort of what you're not good at, and understanding what you are good at, and then making sure you do it. But when you're not good at something, get somebody else to do it and listen to them,
brilliant.
and allow them to do that. And so yeah, so that's yeah, I found yeah, there's I'm just trying to think of sort of things I'm not so good at. There's lots of things I'm not so good at. What I am good at is, let's say, probably the analysis and understanding processes. That's which is fortunate.
Yeah, yes,
Sort of the core of what we do,
yeah,
and yeah, understanding processes and understanding uh, systems and things like that. I think I am able to identify lean and sort of break away from
yes.
fundamentals really.
No, that's great, but I wouldn't underestimate the value of understanding the value of delegation, if that makes sense. Many
Yeah,
many people I work with, they really struggle with delegation, and that's what
I
holds back time and time again.
I do. I'll be honest. I struggle with delegation. I'm a
Yeah,
bit of a control freak, which is not good. You need to basically step back and sort of say, right, yeah, actually, I've got good people working for me.
yes,
Let them do it.
yeah,
And they are good at what they do.
yeah,
They've proved that, and all our customers keep telling me, which is good. And so let them do it, and let them sort of take it forward.
brilliant.
And yeah, so
Wonderful. And looking forward to a little bit, Howard, what does the future look like for you guys? And what do you see as the main challenges you face, if any?
there's a lot of challenges going forward.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of change coming. I mean, customs is a fast evolving process,
Of
and
course.
there's a lot of changes going on in Europe in terms of the customs processes going on there. They're
Yep.
streamlining a lot of their systems and trying to make things reduce the customs, ease the customs processes across Europe.
Yep.
We've got computer changes in HMRC coming up later on this year. We've just had a change, which is going to be a big challenge to us, actually, which in HMRC have introduced, which we've now got to basically try and address.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting process. I'm desperate to try and sort of improve the processes that we have within HMRC and within the customs processes to try and make them smoother, to sort of streamline them. I think that is the biggest challenge that we've got, is to make sure that we don't make things more complicated than they already are.
Yeah.
And actually try and move in the opposite direction.
Yes.
I'm not confident, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
My instincts are that things are going to get more complicated in the future if we're not very careful.
Right.
But how getting that in place, I think, is the biggest challenge going forwards.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, and I can understand it's an ever changing. I would imagine an ever changing situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the whole UK tariff changes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Everybody sort of seems to think it's a fixed process. It's not. They're constantly evolving, constantly being tweaked, and keeping up to date with all of that is a challenge. And I feel for traders who struggle with that when it's not their core area and they don't necessarily have somebody on tap to sort of help them with it all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, just managing that whole process is going to be a challenge going forwards.
Yeah, no, I can completely see that. And I'm keen to know what you would say to anyone that's thinking of going into business right now.
I would say the benefit of getting advice is critical. Get advice, talk to a lot of people about what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you're going to go into an industry, make sure it's something that you're interested in. If you're setting up a business, hopefully it will be in something that you're interested in. It's unusual for people to do so when they're not.
Yes.
But get sort of interest. But talk to people. Understand that it's going to cost more than you think it is.
Yeah.
It always costs more than you expect it to.
Yes.
So be prepared for that. But talk to people, get advice, listen to people, and get a good team around you. I think that for me would be the key message.
That's great advice. Again, go back to that sort of the whole delegation piece, isn't it? It's it so limits the we call it the Superman syndrome. I've got to do everything because it holds business leaders back so much.
Absolutely.
In fact, I was speaking to I heard a lady speak 2 or 3 weeks ago who was the ex CTO of Microsoft. So she used to work directly at the board of Microsoft, and she said something that was really fascinating. She said in the US, when they recruit C-suite individuals, directors, the chief officers of whatever, one of the things they do, they actively test them for the ability not to do things.
Yeah.
And it really struck me that is so much in almost opposition to most business people I meet, who it's all about, oh yeah, I get this done and I'm driving it forward, and it's that's the trap we can fall into, isn't it? When we make it about us.
Absolutely. I think there is this kind of personality cult, and it's got to be about the individual, and it's actually never about the individual. It's always about the team. But we want to sometimes make stars of
yes,
of that and do that. And in reality, it's not. It's the team that always basically comes up with the solution.
Yeah.
Or comes up with the prize.
Yes.
It's never an individual. If you go to I think it was either Steve Jobs or Elon Musk who said, "I'm not that good. I just employ good people."
Yeah.
And that is the key. That is the key.
100%. The job of a business owner, business leader, is to employ good people and lead them well. That's it. There isn't anything else that we should be doing. That doesn't mean we won't be doing when we start and then through different phases of a business, or even when in difficult times when we may need to jump in. But our job primarily is look after, recruit and look after a great team. They'll look after the customers look after the business looks after us. And it is as simple as that. It's not, that doesn't make it easy, but it is as simple as that. That makes it easy. And
Yeah, I think going back to those sort of sayings you said once about those, I think one of the good ones is that I heard once that sort of the saying that said, "Don't work in the business, work on the business."
yeah,
So the function of a leader, of a managing director or whatever, is to develop the business, not to do the groundwork, not to
100%.
do the basic work.
We
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. No, go on.
No. Well, it all comes back to this sort of thing of sort of having a good team around you, delegating to the right people, letting them do what they want to do, so you can actually do other things.
Absolutely.
And actually take the business into new areas.
Yeah, we often, it's quite interesting because we our definition of true business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners, and
Yes.
it's understanding that, and most people really that they struggle with the concept. They really like the idea,
Yeah.
but they struggle with the idea that actually we should be creating an entity that's independent of ourselves. Having founded it, it won't work from day one like that, or it's unlikely.
Yes.
But that's where sensibly, if we move towards, we're going to be able to reap the rewards of the business without having to still be tied to it, and as you say, in it rather than on it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that ability to sort of go away for a month and sort of just go on holiday for a month, and everybody would say, a lot of people would want to feel wanted or needed, but actually you shouldn't. A sign of success is that you're not needed, because you've set it up correctly, and actually it doesn't need you. So you shouldn't feel guilty about going away for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks on being able to just forget about it because you know it's going to work.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because we've helped quite a few people achieve that, and it's great to see almost it's a really interesting set of emotions. I'll go away for a long period of time. I have one of my clients went away for 6 weeks to learn to kite surf in Mexico, so that was like completely away from the business, and it was there was those mixed emotions of it didn't, is it great it didn't need me, or is it bad that it didn't need me? But that's its purpose. Its purpose so no, fascinating. And if you started again, Howard, is there anything you would do differently, do you think?
Let's see what I would. I mean, the thing is that if I started the customs process again, I would probably do it slightly differently.
Right.
Part of the problem with that is it was started a bit kind of in a rush.
Yes.
Because it was kind of right.
Probably understandably so.
We need to do this now.
Yeah.
And sort of there's a few things that would probably have sort of said, "Oh, I wouldn't have done quite that way. I'd have gone down here, probably used different software and things like that, and got that sort of sorted out." But it's difficult after all this time. I think what we've got actually is a pretty reasonable model in terms of the way it works. I like the fact that the flexibility of that we work from home. We still sort of are in contact with each other all the time during the day.
Yeah.
I think it works pretty well, to be honest.
Brilliant. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
18-year-old me. Pick something that you enjoy. As I say, as I sort of said it before, make sure you're in something that you enjoy. It's not work if you enjoy it. And it won't feel like work if you enjoy it.
Brilliant.
That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Is to make sure you're doing something in that area. Make sure you talk to people and learn from people. Those are the two big things I would sort of say is the things to do going forward. Getting qualifications is great, but it's not the be all and end all of anything, depending on what you want to do. Obviously in some areas it is the be all and end all. But just because you haven't necessarily got all the qualifications you wanted, that shouldn't close any of the doors in front of you.
Bang on. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely fantastic. Very, very wise words. Thank you so much, Howard. That's been fascinating. For anyone that's watching now that might want to get in touch with you or the company, what would be the best way to do that?
Best way would probably be if you go visit our website, which is www.bgm.uk.com. And there's a contact opportunity on there, on the contacts page on there, which will easily put you through to us. Or equally, you can sort of email me on at howard.mould@bgm.uk.com.
Brilliant.
There's a couple of ways.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you so much. Be great to swing by another 6-12 months to see how things are going, how I guess the customs world is developing, but how the business is developing in general.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for your time this afternoon, Howard.
Thanks for having me on. It's been good talking to you, Chris. It's been great.
And you. Thank you.